Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Thank you guys for joining another Necromancer hardcore journey. It has been going pretty well on Kripa 1, which is our first Necromancer. Last time we left off, we were about level 35, and I'm just logging in. This is actually the second day that I ended up playing. Oh, am I just checking? Hearthstone into D4, there it is. So we're 35, we're doing pretty well. We got this build going where we drop the curse, but we're using the golem, the blood golem. 15 damage goes to the golem, but we get the damage of the golem. And we're using all these corpse mechanics because one of the first few legendaries that I got empowers core skills when you use a corpse. And you generally want to be very mindful of your first few legendary drops because they will temporarily kind of warp how you make your character, how you make your build. And this is a really successful build. Honestly, I would probably advocate for this build even if you don't get that particular legendary aspect. Now, some people, they design a build and they kind of go ham because they can actually get some of the legendary aspects from the codexes, but that's not really going to play until, like, again, level like 45, 50 or something like that, because in order to use a legendary aspect from a codex, you have to use quite a lot of crafting materials, and those crafting materials are going to be sourced from salvaging legendaries. So like you have to salvage, like, I don't know, 4, 5, or 6 legendary armors to be able to use the codex of a specific legendary armor. That's like super wasteful. You don't want to be doing that. You want to just kind of be playing opportunistically. You get a legendary item that can buff a skill that isn't too bad for where your character is at that point in time, then you can go use that ability. It works out pretty well. And if you're wondering, you definitely want to be salvaging every single thing that you find, and you want to be clicking on those ore veins. Silver is probably the rarest material. Silver is used in upgrading weapons and upgrading jewelry, and those are really big ones. Okay, you're going to want to get weapons all the time. You actually end up keeping your jewelry for much longer because the resists are so bad, and just, you know, having slightly lower baseline resists for stats that you might want in particular, you actually do want to make that trade-off pretty often. But weapons, you want to be upgrading weapons. So you want to be salvaging to start to get some of these materials. If you salvage like a level 10 rare sword or a level 100 rare sword, you're going to get pretty much the same stuff from the salvage, but the sell value is going to be much, much higher on the high end. So when you start playing, new account, new season, first time playing hardcore, anything like that, you want to be salvaging like everything. I don't know where the ideal breakpoint is, but what I've been doing is salvaging everything until I get to like level 50 something, 60 or so. And then you want to be vendoring almost everything except the legendary items, because you're going to need those legendary items components to be able to apply codex powers on some of your gear. But at this point, gear-wise, we're just, again, opportunistically using the legendary aspects that drop. There's only one real stat that is giving me meaningful amount of damage, and that is vulnerable damage. So vulnerable damage is its own multiplier in the game, and you can get as much as, like, I don't know, 10 or 11% baseline on rings, and like double that on your weapon. And because we're using Bone Spear and Corpse Tendrils with the vulnerable upgrade, that is quite a lot of damage that is meaningful. Very few other things are going to increase your damage too meaningfully, but because we also don't have any additive damage, getting a little bit of conditional damage with a condition that you, I don't know, think you can get pretty frequently is also going to be pretty powerful. Like damage to slow, damage to close, just a little bit of that to get you started. That's kind of what you're looking for on gear. You want to keep your two-hand slot pretty open. You don't want to be too attached to like legendary powers on your two-hander. Your two-hander, you're just looking for raw damage, okay? Higher DPS, let's go, log in, okay? That's how it works. I do prefer scythes way more than swords because we're not really able to crit very much, and scythes have the life on kill, which is surprisingly powerful. By the way, life on kill goes to your minions. Okay, so you might see the difference even in my playthrough when I'm using a scythe versus a two-handed sword. Yes, the two-handed sword crits harder, but we don't crit that often. But when you use a scythe, the minions are like always topped off, and that is just so smooth for power clearing. And I will mention, that Life on Kill is going to be a very powerful anti-disconnect mechanic for Necromancers, because your minions are still going to get some kills, hopefully, when you are disconnected or disconnecting. And if they're getting some kills, if they're healing you up, that is actually a really big deal. And minions only get like 30% of your crit damage anyway, so the sword options are kind of weak. In terms of upgrading gear, most armor requires like leather and stuff, and you're going to get a lot of leather just kind of killing animals and stuff throughout the world. Let's fast forward a little bit here. So you're going to get a lot of leather. It's not really worth upgrading past 2 because you have to use your veiled crystals, which are the rare ones. Again, it's not that big a deal, but we're going to be using a lot of those for items later on. So I like the double upgrade on armor. But if I'm at a point where I'm just like super regularly changing my weapon, I don't want to do that second upgrade. The second upgrade on a weapon actually does take silver. So silver is going to be pretty rare. You're going to get silver from some of the salvages that you're going to do, but not that much. You're going to also get a lot of your silver from clicking on ore veins as you're wandering around the world. And honestly, since the first part of the game, we're collecting renown, we're getting those Lilith shrines, it's kind of important to be mindful that we are going to, go throughout the world more in this phase than any other. So you want to click on those herb things, on the ore things, to try to get a stockpile of this. I actually got a pretty powerful aspect there. I think it's on that shield, is it? Yeah, so we got +2 skeletons, which is really, really nice. The first few legendaries that dropped on this character were really lucky. You want to get +2 warriors, +2 mages. Blizzard, all 3 of those can be utilities. You want to gamble, boost your obols if you can. But a really big one that I got that later on I kind of decided is maybe mandatory for hardcore. It's the immunity bubble. So it has a 90-second cooldown, which is pretty bad, but it's really good on characters that use barrier, because if you have like 50% of your life in barrier, the when you're not healthy, the 80% point of your health is not exactly when you take 20% damage. It's going to be like when you take half of your effective life in damage if you're using barriers. And with Bone Storm, we can keep up a barrier, I think, pretty often with this character. So that thing should be very powerful for an anti-disconnect mechanic. It's also like a cheat death-ish mechanic. Like, yeah, if you get clean one shot, you're still gonna die. But if you see that bubble pop, you're gonna know you're taking a lot of damage. Okay, it's going to prevent you from dying to like 2 or 3 or like multi-hit attacks or abilities, again, really big. And it's going to cover like half of the time of you being disconnected if you get disconnected. So that is a really big deal as well. Very happy I got that. But again, with legendary aspects, we want to kind of stash them. I don't recommend drawing out the aspect because, you might lose it on the character. Normally, if you're playing softcore, you can utilize the part of your inventory that has all the different aspects. But if you're playing hardcore, you kind of just want to stash it or mule it away, because you don't want your inventory of aspects to go away when you might die, possibly, maybe. As we move on, the character generally held a very similar build. I don't think I changed this build for a while. It was really proving to be very effective. Again, this is a build that I would really recommend, where we're playing a Bone Spear character, but we are utilizing minions to kind of help us generate essence, generate corpses. The curse went away for the golem because we're not really critting that much. I believe at level 40 or so, I definitely have the ultimate passive. I actually went with the ultimate passive for bone skills to give me higher damage with Bone Spear, but I don't know if that was really worth it. I feel like it's not really super effective until you start really scaling how much you have. So some of the other ones might be pretty attractive. You might even consider the 10% more life because you're using Blood Mist anyway. You can get that to overpower every 15 seconds. It's not a lot of damage, but an overpowered Blood Mist is actually pretty decent AoE. So who knows? That is something that you guys might want to explore with, as a matter of fact. As we move on in the 40s, I'm reaching a point where I can kind of see that the finish line for difficulty 1 is coming up pretty soon. So I'm kind of skewing my play style a little bit away from full completing zones, and I'm more aggressively trying to get the first few breakpoints. So the first renown completion is a skill point, super important. The second one, I believe, is a potion slot, which again, super important, okay, especially if you don't have that much healing. And Necros, most builds don't have a lot of healing. And the third one is a skill point as well. So my goals kind of changed here because I see that, in 8 or 9 levels, I want to go to World Tier 3. So we want to get as much character power as we can until we get that. So right now, I'm much more than the earlier levels power running to try to get, one, all the Lilith shrines, because again, it unlocks that, breaking character power. And I'm trying to get all of those skill points. I didn't focus fire one zone like crazy. Like I didn't fully complete 2,000 around in any one zone because that would actually get me to like level 40 plus. I think one player on Reddit actually said that they got past level 50 just full completing one act. So yeah, that is a little bit tricky. That is a little bit of a mess, I would say. And as we're approaching here, I'm again more opportunistically doing events. I'm trying to get the Tree of Whispers. The Tree of Whispers, after about level 35 or so, they actually start to award you with the legendary boxes. Now, I don't exactly know how the legendary boxes work off of the Tree of Whispers, but in my experience, I believe I've always gotten at least one legendary from them. Possibly that's what it means, or it could just have a higher rarity, modifier implicit on it, where on average it'll just give you more. But I believe I've gotten one for each level. Overall, things are looking pretty smooth for the character here. I'm feeling pretty confident. Generally, the first boss fight you have to do on World Tier 2, the Lights Chapel, I think it is. Anyway, that boss to enable to unlock World Tier 3 is not too hard if you do it at level 50. So I'm feeling, if I have a good character, I'm going to do it at level 50. Why not? I also, at this point, started considering the cheat death potions. So there are elixirs in hardcore that actually don't exist in softcore. Before the game came out, I didn't know that they didn't exist in softcore, but it's true. These potions only exist in hardcore for whatever reason. And they give you kind of like a cheat death effect with a cooldown on it. They're super powerful, but I don't know if they're really the best potion to use all the time. Also, if you're pretty confident that you're going to do the content, maybe you don't need to use one. They require fairly rare materials. I think the best way to get them is to target farm some elites, but some elites that give you these ingredients are going to be in zones that are like 45 plus, like Act 5 and whatnot. So you can't really do that right away anyway. Now, the other elixirs I would consider using is just armor. Armor is just so unbelievably busted that I believe the top armor elixir gives you 900 armor. Like 900 armor can give you like it can take your physical DR from like 60 to 80. Okay, that's like 50% damage reduction of physical extra. Okay, like an enormous amount. So I am not all crazy for cheat death elixirs, but yes, they are always going to be a consideration. So as we move on here, it was a pretty good stream. It was a pretty good run. The levels are coming in. I'm just trying to really race and get all Lilith shrines as the World Tier 3 unlocking dungeon awaits in the next episode. Thanks for watching.